This is a clip of Jamal Anderson at the height of his powers, but sometimes life can take you from one extreme to another.
You have your driver's license with you?
Yeah.
Let me have your driver's license. Your driver's license.
The male came in and exposed himself?
Yeah, the male came in.
Now, I know it's been a long week for Falcons fans with the Calvin Ridley news, but you can rest assured of two things. One, I was working on this video way before that news dropped. And two, this video will be a celebration of Jamal Anderson's career, but of course towards the end, we gotta cover the craziness that's taken place since he retired. So these days, the Atlanta Falcons have become infamous for blowing a 25-point lead in Super Bowl 51. But us sports fans are kind of like the dude who walks in and out of the movie theater. He going to the bathroom and then he gotta get popcorn 20 minutes later until he finally sits down for the last 20 minutes of the film. Then immediately after rushes to Twitter to give a bad review. Much like that dude, all we remember is the very last thing that happened. The year the Falcons blew that lead, nobody remembered them blistering Russell Wilson and what was left of the Legion of Boom by 20, then blowing out Aaron Rodgers and the Packers in order to get to the Super Bowl. But fair or unfair, that's the nature of sports. But here's the funny part. A decade earlier, they made an extremely similar run, and that one too has been largely forgotten. In 1998, the Atlanta Falcons dominated the regular season with the best team their franchise has ever seen, at least from a win-loss standpoint. They went 14-2 in the regular season and then took out the 49ers, who had Steve Young, Jerry Rice, T.O., 3 Hall of Famers who were all playing at a Pro Bowl level. In the very next round, they took out the Vikings, who had 3 Hall of Famers of their own: Randall Cunningham, Chris Carter, and the freak, Randy Moss. Although they ultimately came up short in the Super Bowl, their success that season is undeniable. It's as undeniable as the primary reason they was in that position in the first place. Enter the subject of today's video, the Dirty Bird himself, Jamal Anderson. This man dominated the league during the era of the every down back. I already know the fake alphas be uncomfortable when I use words like this, but his running style was honestly just beautiful to watch, and I only appreciate it more now that I'm older. Dude was fluid, had great vision and game speed, and the man seemed damn near impossible to tackle at times. He ran over dudes, threw them, still form them, hit them up, whatever. As a late 90s running back, this man had it all. In 1998, he rushed for 1,846 yards and 14 TDs. And that many scores meant you got to see plenty of his Dirty Bird dance. And for a 10-year-old me, it just made the game feel so fun and accessible. Bro, till this day, I can remember classmates coming to school talking about this dance, you know what I'm saying, hitting me. Memories etched in my brain. This was a moment in time. Jamal had the makings of a superstar, the Mad King, who was about to set the NFL on fire. But unfortunately, his reign was short-lived. I truly believe he had potential to be one of the best ever, but sports history hasn't been kind to Jamal. The dude's been largely forgotten by most of the football world, and today, you don't ever even hear his name mentioned. Making matters worse has been his less than graceful transition into post-football life. We talking multiple arrests with both drug and DUI charges levied against him. This video will cover a range of topics that are forever connected with Jamal Anderson. Most of y'all already know how we do it. We talking childhood, college days, pro days, and of course post-career. And I'm also going to get into the origins of the Dirty Bird dance. It's actually a pretty dope story behind how it came about, so stay tuned because that's coming later in this video as well, once we get to that point in the timeline. So bro, go ahead, sit down and strap in, because we're about to experience the highly turbulent flight of the one and only Dirty Bird. I'm FlemLo Raps, and this is what happened to Jamal Anderson. To the way.
No quitter, 'cause I'ma go get her.
Alright, so real quick before we jump in, it's time for a word from today's video sponsor, Dr. Squatch. So on this channel, I only take sponsorships of products that I believe are actually helpful to the viewers of this channel. I've done apps that promote reading, money management, or sometimes it's just a dope product. But today's video sponsor, Dr. Squatch, is one that I really like because it promotes good hygiene. They provide all these natural soap products, shampoo, deodorant, and overall I just think it's a really solid brand. So all their soaps are made in the US using ingredients that you can actually find in nature. And believe it or not, that's not something you can actually say about the majority of big soap brands. coconut oil, shea butter, olive oil. For me, these are things that my wife just keeps bottles of around the house. So it's nice to also have a masculine smelling soap that consists of the same good stuff, keeping it consistent. So last time I talked to y'all about the spearmint basil. But if you want something a little bit more mild with the smell, I'd say the cool fresh aloe is a good choice. Now on the opposite end of that spectrum, I'd say the eucalyptus Greek yogurt, hell of a name I know, would actually be a great choice. This one kind of reminds me of the smell of like a really nice steam room, and it's kind of got that little calming effect to it. And while we at it, don't forget they got shampoo and conditioner as well. So bro, if you want to check it out, I can hook you up. New customers can get 20% off on orders of $20 or more if you use my code DSQ FlemLo and click the link in the description. Man, shout out to Dr. Squatch once again for sponsoring the video. Without further ado, let's get back to the story. Jamon Anderson grew up in New Jersey during the 70s, and dude actually had a pretty huge family. We talking 7 brothers and sisters. His dad was actually a well-known policeman in the area, but he wasn't just any cop. He actually provided private security for some of the most famous athletes and celebrities at the time. Alright, let's drop these names. You ready? Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Richard Pryor, Jim Brown, and even Michael Jackson. Here's a quote from Jamal. I grew up around a lot of people who were called the greatest, but my family always treated them like they were anybody else. People tell me, you saw those superstars when they were being real, but I prefer to say I saw them when they were just being genuine people. Being in such close proximity to so many literal all-time greats really rubbed off on a young Jamal Anderson. He studied them, and he saw at an early age how these greats were wired, how they ticked. But seeing as how he was extremely young at the time, he did what we all did when we was young. He basically put it into terms that a young kid could comprehend. Again, something we've all done, but I do believe that sometimes things get lost in translation during that oversimplification process. From watching all those football films and being around all those celebrities, I learned that if you're gonna play, you've gotta be the best. Always be number one. Win, win, win. Question is, what happens when you don't? As Jamal got a little bit older, his family moved from New Jersey to San Fernando Valley in Southern California. And there's absolutely no doubt about it, Jamal's competitive spirit and drive to be the best helped him to earn all-state honors. But poor grades limited his opportunity to go to a big university. It was gonna be the JUCO route or bust for Jamal. So he spent 2 years at Moore Park College in California. And after 2 seasons there, the big dogs came calling. But oddly enough, these was calls that went completely unanswered, as my man chose not to go to USC or Cal or even Arizona. He decided instead to spend his last 2 years of college eligibility at Utah. Now you'd think the main reason you choose a Utah over a USC would be playing time. But I'm looking at the stats and that couldn't have been it. So in 1992, the year Jamal Anderson went to Utah as a JUCO junior, okay? We ain't talking about a freshman here. There were actually 2 running backs who had 100+ carries on the season. Neither of those guys was named Jamal Anderson. He had the best yards per carry average on the team and managed to score basically the same number of touchdowns as the 2 leading backs. And while he was pretty good in the pass game that first year, as you can see, those opportunities were distributed evenly between Jamal and 3 other running backs. I guess it's good he had all them brothers and sisters growing up, because it tells you 2 things. My man was used to competing and he was used to sharing. The following year, 1993, it seems the coaches may have come to their senses, because while both Pierre Jones and Keith Williams were good college backs, like don't get me wrong, Jamal Anderson was Jamal Anderson. So despite returning both of them lead backs from the year before, the carry distribution in 93 swung wildly in Jamal's favor. And while all 3 running backs still got a healthy amount of touches, now it was Jamal getting a bulk with 168 attempts. And despite now getting the most carries, dude still easily led the team in yards per carry average, and he finished with just under 1,000 yards and 11 TDs on the ground. Now Jamal made the most of his college experience and had fun with it. As competitive as he could be, he seemed to still love the social aspect and the camaraderie of it all. So he and some of his teammates had a thing about just rocking polo shirts. I'm talking about like all the time, to the point where they called themselves the Low Crew. Now according to several interviews that he's done, Jamal and the Low Crew had a little dance that they hit, where they basically jump side to side and throw their elbows outward. You know, just one of them little fun things that usually dies off once you and the boys leave college. But of course, an alternate version of this dance would show his face at some point down the line. But as dope as it is that Jamal made the most of his college experience, when it came time to go to the next level, sharing carries the way he had to really came back to bite him. That was a price for putting up average numbers at, a mid-tier college program. That price was millions of dollars, as he slipped so far in the draft that he damn near slipped out of it altogether. So check this out. In the 1994 draft, there were only 2 running backs in the entire draft class to ever be named to an all-pro team. One taken in the first round, and then, wait for it, one taken in the last round. NFL teams hadn't seen enough from him in college, so they passed him up, pick after pick after pick. I gotta imagine this was a huge shot to Jamal's pride, which by the way is 1000% understandable. And I'm only saying that because if I was as talented as this dude and then I slipped all the way to the last round, that's how I would feel. My pride would be shot. Jamal had grown up so close to the stars that he could touch him, and he likely believed that by doing so, he'd absorb the magic that they all possessed. And he likely felt that that greatness would come pouring out of him soon. Any moment now. When Jamal first got to Atlanta, his first year was abysmal. He carried the ball a grand total of 2 times. We talking about the same dude who would tote it 400 plus times only a few seasons later. But the 7th round pick had to wait his turn. And after his rookie season, my dude actually managed to have even less yards than he did before he got drafted. Year number 2 was a little bit better, but it was his 3rd year, 1996, when a 24-year-old Jamal became the featured back for Atlanta. This was his chance, and bro, this man seized his moment. He ended up rushing for over 1,000 yards in his first year as the starter. Maybe even more impressively, he flexed his muscle in the pass game, catching 49 passes for 473 yards. The 7th round pick was insanely productive, and Jamal's productivity would carry over into the following season as well. As in 1997, he posted his 2nd consecutive 1,000-yard rushing season. This was starting to become a trend. But 1998 is when he really took flight. Although, as you'll see, he would end up having a crash landing not too long after. As I established in the intro, Jamal Anderson grew up around some of the biggest and brightest stars of the time. It was something that he aspired to one day achieve for himself, but his football career had been a long, grueling grind, and that was just to become a starting running back in the NFL. Through JUCO, a less than stellar college career, and getting selected in the NFL draft after most fans had already turned it off, becoming an actual star in the league, bro, that seemed a pretty long way off. But like the side view mirror in your car, it was actually a hell of a lot closer than it appeared. For the Falcons, the start of the 1998 season was different from any other in recent memory. They brought in new head coach Dan Reeves in the previous season, and though that 1997 season had gotten off to a rocky start, Jamal and the rest of the team had really began to catch their stride towards the end of the year, going from an embarrassing 0-5 start to a respectable 7-9 finish. So when the 1998 season rolled around, the team managed to keep that momentum going, winning 5 of their first 6 games. And with Jamal on the way to having his best season as a pro, people quickly started to take notice. According to a Rolling Stone article published in 2017, following their Week 4 beatdown of the Carolina Panthers, a 30-point blowout in the Georgia Dome, Jamal and his teammates were headed to their cars on cloud 9 after the big win. That's when a Falcons fan who was also on cloud 9 that day yelled down from the bridge up above him. He was like, "That's them Dirty Bird right there." Here's the rest of the story from the same article, a direct quote from Jamal. So we get back Monday for watching film, and everybody was like, "Yo, did you hear that guy?" It was the first time we'd really heard it. We took to it. It was an attitude. In the way he was saying it was like, yeah, that's how you play. Once again, according to the article, that's when Jamal, along with several of his teammates, was kind of brainstorming ways to bring more media attention to the squad. Because they had been playing well, but they were still like, second class when compared to the Georgia Bulldogs right there in the same state. So ultimately, Jamal came up with an alternate version of the low dance that he used to hit in college. He ended up making 1 or 2 alterations and boom, he had it. Or so he thought. The plan was every time you score a touchdown, or anybody on the team for that matter who was down to do it, when it came time to celebrate, you get up and you hit what Jamal and his teammates were now calling the Dirty Bird, right? Then they just sit back and watch the fanfare come flying in, you know? Now, tight end O.J. Santiago, who is also credited with helping to popularize the dance, helped spread the Dirty Bird name throughout the Falcons locker room. And the name is dope, so I imagine it didn't take too much convincing before the rest of the team had bought in. Now they just needed the rest of the world to catch on. So week 6 rolls around and the Falcons were set to play in prime time versus the New York Giants. We talking about the perfect stage for the new dance. But there was a problem. For only the second time that entire season, Jamal Anderson didn't get into the end zone. And nobody else on the team wanted to be the first one to break the dance out. Primetime opportunity, missed. So the next week comes. Now it's week 7. Versus division rival the New Orleans Saints, Jamal got back into the end zone on a classic Jamal Anderson run. And now it was time for the debut. So he hops up and he does a version of the Dirty Bird, but it wasn't the version we all have come to know and love. And without the perfected version of the dance, it still didn't catch on. But Jamal didn't give up, he continued to tweak it. Now I want to pause real quick and say to the traditionalists out there, please don't view this as a selfish or a look at me act. It wasn't called the Dirty Jamal and he wasn't the only one allowed to do it. It was promoting a new team nickname for what at the time was considered a lowly franchise. And this type of team promotion is important for teams that aren't taken seriously in the NFL. It helps build momentum and helps build a brand. And it also helps to shine a light on dudes who are showing up day in and day out, working their ass off and winning games. But despite all of that, not getting the same love as some other teams who they may actually be better than. And when it comes to the whole Dirty Bird thing, I can pretty much promise you that the Falcons got the biggest benefit from this. So when you really look at it, what Jamal was actually doing was building up the organization that he played for, trying to turn it into something that they could all be proud of. And ain't a damn thing selfish about that. Now I'm gonna turn back to this camera. A couple weeks later versus the St. Louis Rams, Jamal broke out yet another version of the dance after scoring the touchdown. Did the sports world just stop and pay homage to this phenomenon that would go down in NFL history? Nope. Nobody gave a damn. And it was in part because nobody was really watching, man. The Rams was pretty awful at that time. Funny enough though about the Rams, the very next season they literally won the Super Bowl, going from worst to first when Kurt Warner took over as the starter. But that's a video for another day, so subscribe if you want to see it. Following the Rams game, the Falcons had the Patriots up next, a team with more playoff wins in the 90s alone than the Falcons had in their entire franchise history at the time. Now this was the type of stage that the Dirty Bird could really catch on. And it's funny because the Falcons actually beat the hell out the Patriots too, bro. 41-10. But this time it was tight end O.J. Santiago who broke out a version of the dance, but still didn't have the finishing touches on it. Funny little side note, in that game the Falcons actually led the Patriots by a very familiar margin. But that time, it held up. Finally, the next week, week 11. This is the week right here. The Falcons were playing against the San Francisco 49ers in a playoff preview formed later in that same season. Bro, this was a huge game for the Falcons as they went into that game with an 8-2 record and were finally being taken seriously by everybody, after losing the Patriots the week before. Jamal ran for 100 yards exactly and scored 2 touchdowns in that game. And this time when he got in the end zone, he broke out the definitive version of the Dirty Bird. We're talking about the one that swept the nation, grabbed the sports world by the collar and hemmed it up, The version of the Dirty Bird that grew his wings and had little kids hitting it in the hallway at school and getting yelled at by Miss Graham. The dance would go down in history until this day, stands up there with the Icky Shuffle, Victor Cruz's Salsa, and today's Gritty popularized by Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. But not only did the dance take off after that game, Jamal actually surpassed 1,000 yards rushing for the 3rd straight season on that same night. And keep in mind it was only week 11. Dude was about to do something historic. The Falcons rode the momentum into the playoffs. And like I talked about in the intro, once they got there, they knocked off several teams that were stacked with Hall of Famers on the way to the Falcons organization's first ever Super Bowl appearance. Jamon Anderson had finished the regular season with 1,846 yards, and at the time only 8 men had ever rushed for more yards in an NFL season. We're talking cats like Eric Dickerson, Barry Sanders, O.J. Simpson, Earl Campbell, Walter Payton, and Jim Brown. We're talking all-time greats, at least one of which Jamal had met as a young child. And now, at least for one season, he could be mentioned in the same sentence as. Pretty damn dope. So to accomplish a feat that rare during the same season that you create an iconic end zone dance, a season where you also get your team all the way to the Super Bowl, to do all of that in the same season, you'd think Jamal Anderson would be remembered and talked about more. So why the hell did everybody seem to get hit with the neuralizer from Men in Black? The answer can be explained with 2 letters. TD. Short for touchdown, or Terrence Davis, or this dude, or Terrell Davis. Terrell Davis, man. What was that, Game Day 98? Untouchable. While Jamal Anderson was doing all of this, rushing for 1,800 yards and becoming one of the most popular players in the league, all while carrying the Atlanta Falcons to the Super Bowl, it was Terrell Davis who was one-upping my dude at every opportunity he got. So in the same season when Jamal Anderson outrushed everybody else, this man decided to put up over 2,000 yards and not only make it to the Super Bowl, he decided to win it. He decided to win league MVP. And then when he faced off head to head against Jamal in the Super Bowl, he decided to win Super Bowl MVP. He also led the league in rushing touchdowns, won Offensive Player of the Year, just to make sure there was absolutely nothing left. TD took all of it, man. He took everything. Jamal had once said that he'd learned from the greats he grew up around that if you're gonna play, you've got to be the best. Always be number one and win. But Terrell Davis ended up taking the RB1 spot that year in an extremely tough race, along with the Lombardi, having my boy Jamal settle for doing the dirty bird to a fiddle with the number 2 on it. Funny enough, their Super Bowl performances that year were nearly identical. They both ended up hovering right around 100 yards, with TD slightly outpacing Jamal, but one big difference came down to the fact that Jamal did lose a fumble, and TD, even though he carried and caught the ball more, lost none. Plus Chandler, who I kind of feel bad because this is the first time I mentioned him in this video. He was actually a good quarterback during his time. He was a multiple-time Pro Bowler and a Pro Bowler that year, but he also threw 3 interceptions in the Super Bowl to John Elway's 1. And this is one of them cases where you can just look at the stats and know, hey, turnovers played a big role in this game. Only one draft class apart, Terrell Davis versus Jamal Anderson looked like an epic running back rivalry for years to come. But unfortunately, fate had other plans, as they both tore their ACLs in the very next season, man. 1999. Terrell Davis was never the same after that, never again even getting close to 1,000 yards. And while Jamal looked like he had bounced back pretty well in the year 2000, in 2001, shortly after help arrived in the form of Michael Vick, Jamal once again tore up his knee, and this time, it was career ending. So after 8 years in the NFL, Jamal Anderson only played significant snaps in 4 of them. And guess what? In all 4 seasons, he was a 1,000-yard rusher. Had health been on his side, he's very likely a Hall of Fame back, but even without that, the impact he left on the game is everlasting. A career in the NFL, on the other hand, is not, and most careers age like milk as opposed to wine. No longer able to play the game that he loved, Jamal still wanted to be close to it, so he did what a lot of guys do. He went into broadcasting. There he would spend a lot of his time hyping up his alma mater, University of Utah, and he frequently advocated for Mountain West schools to get more BCS opportunities. So regardless of what you say about the dude, he always wanted the best for the teams that he played for. In the mid to late 2000s, Jamal was finding his way as an analyst, but when the camera turned off, my dude was struggling. But see, unlike the heroes that Jamal had grown up around, the world that he was famous in was changing, and it was changing rapidly. You see, the thing about these cameras, bro, they are always watching. In 2009, Jamal was arrested on suspicion of cocaine possession, and the arresting officer said he saw Jamal and another man snorting the coke off a toilet bowl, bro. That's scary, dark, disgusting. Crazy, wow, just bro. Since then, he's been arrested at least 4 different times for driving under the influence, and take all of them adjectives I just used and just bring them right on back, because in 2016, my boy was quick tripping in Quick Trip. He walked into the store clearly under the influence of something and randomly starts flashing money and giving it to the cashiers. While this sounds like a decent day at work getting free money, the cashiers didn't accept it because something was very clearly wrong. They kept asking Jamal what the money was for and what he was trying to purchase, but they couldn't understand whatever he was mumbling, and eventually he walks to the back of the store. According to the male cashier, Jamal was back there for quite a while when the cashier noticed that dude was randomly exposing himself. The whole thing was eventually resolved and Jamal left out of the store under his own power, and he ended up not even getting arrested because the store clerks refused to prosecute. Something that I don't think the police were very happy about. The reason they chose not to prosecute is kind of a mystery, but this did take place in Atlanta, Georgia, so it's a pretty good chance they recognized Jamal and wanted to cut him a break. After the whole thing was over, the police issued a warning for criminal trespassing, which effectively banned Jamal from ever returning to that store. So when you're dealing with ex-football players, especially a physical running back like Jamal Anderson, CTE is always a possible explanation for erratic behavior, and some people don't like it, but listen, it's possible, it's even probable, you know what I'm saying? Even though we all know that CTE isn't to blame for every damn thing, it may actually have nothing to do with this whole Jamal Anderson situation at all. You can't just dismiss it outright. You have to consider it at least. With that said, hopefully we won't know about the whole CTE side of it for a very, very, very long time, seeing as how the only way you can actually diagnose it is after the person has passed away. But the beautiful thing about life is you can work through it. On the bright side, Jamal has made several appearances since that 2016 Quick Trip incident, and he stated that he's gotten his mind right since then. Although there was another incident in 2018, not nearly as bad though. I mean, it's still not good, but you know. This time he basically got drunk and then refused to pay his limo drive. Kinda made a scene, ended up getting arrested. Now pay attention to this. He ended up having to pay $200 to bail out of jail. The limo bill? $50. Tough. In closing, bro, to empathize with the man, it's gotta be tough. You work so damn hard to get somewhere and to become something, and then it's all taken away prematurely. You never get the opportunity to redeem your loss and further etch your name into the history books. Jamal grew up wanting to be immortalized like greats such as Jim Brown and Ali. And while he definitely did make some history, his knee didn't allow him to finish his race. And for a competitive person, I know that's gotta eat at you over the years. Believe it or not, there's still traditionalists out there who shun football dances. And while we can argue what should and shouldn't be celebrated, there's no denying that these celebrations have helped to grow the game. Me as a kid, I was captivated watching Jamal Anderson's creation. If it wasn't for everything a Jamal Anderson and then later on a Chad Johnson, a T.O. brought to the game, who knows, the game might not have hooked me, which means I wouldn't be sitting here doing what I'm doing today. Hell, maybe you wouldn't be on YouTube watching videos of forgotten players, and maybe the league as we know it would not exist, as so many of the game's most talented guys were most likely inspired and captivated just like you and me. And to Jamal Anderson, I know you didn't finish off the way you would have liked, but thank you for everything that you brought to the game. And please take care of yourself out here, bro, because at the end of the day, you're a legend.